Hello everybody, and welcome to our new series, What is Progressive Christianity? We want to give a big shout out to those of you who are tuning in around the US and around the world.
If you've not signed up to receive our weekly email communication, you can do that at gracepoint.net/subscribe.
Welcome to Grace Point.
We are a progressive Christian church,
loving our community by gathering in our homes.
Even as we practice social distancing,
we're asking big questions about what it means to be human,
what it means to love our neighbors,
and what it means to follow Christ.
We're cultivating a safe virtual space to deconstruct or reconstruct,
to question and to grow.
We are welcoming, affirming, and fully inclusive.
Because who you are and who you love are celebrated here.
While we may be physically apart from one another,
we believe we're never truly alone.
You are never alone.
We're together in this.
We're together in this. So even though we can't give you a hug just yet,
we want you to know that you are beloved,
you are included,
and you are affirmed.
Welcome to Grace Point.
Welcome to Grace Point.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Who am I that your love would seek and welcome me. I was lost, but you brought me in. Oh, your love for me. Oh, your love for me. Who your love sets free. Oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Realized you have rescued me. Your grace runs deep. While I was afraid to live, Jesus set me free. With his love for me, who your love sets free. Oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In your loving arms, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. Who your love sets free. Oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In your loving arms, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am.
Good morning, GP kids, and good morning, GP youth. I hope each of you is doing really well. I encourage you to find meaningful and fun ways to connect with your GPK and GPY communities this week. GPY, you hang out throughout the week on the GPY Discord. For Discord invite code, check out our Instagram at GracePointYouthTN. GPY, each week your discussion guides reflect on Pastor Josh's most recent message. If you'd like to discuss Pastor Josh's most recent message in real time, head on over to the GPY Discord this morning. GPK, you hang out with your GP Kids pals every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Zoom. For Zoom info, check out our Instagram at GracePointKidsTN. GP Kids, this week we continue our exploration of the Hebrew creation stories. We will continue to think about and to imagine all of the ways that we can create, care, and connect with all that is lovely and good. And GP parents, if you are curious about all that is being shared with and created for our GPY and GPK communities, and you have yet to join our email list, you can do so by emailing me at lisa@gracepoint.net. All right, peace out, big air hugs, and so much love to each and every one of you.
Join us each week at 10:30 on YouTube to hang out as a community and chat before and after the service.
Don't forget, Reconstruct is each week on Wednesday at 6:30.
Our new Books and Brews will feature a book by Rebecca Tausig, Sitting Pretty. Join us January 19th at 8 p.m. on Zoom to discuss.
The annual church business meeting will be taking place on January 27th, and it will take the place of Reconstruct that week. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We are so happy that we're able to be in this virtual setting. If you are able to give, please do so by texting Grace Point with an E to 77977, or you can go to our website. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.
What's up, Grace Point? For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Ricky Brady, and I am the interim music and arts director for the church. And I've been thinking, I feel like there is a lot of talent that I just don't know about personally in our community. Singers, musicians, players, writers, dancers, whatever it is. I really want to know what your abilities are, what your gifts are, what your talents are. And I know we're not meeting right now, and so it makes it a little tough to get that together, but I want to give my email address out to anybody who's interested in joining and teaming up with the music and arts team. Whatever your talent is, I want to know about it. So you can email me directly at ricky@gracepoint.net, ricky@gracepoint.net, and just communicate, tell me what it is that you'd like to do, and we want to see as many people a part of the worship and the music and arts at the church this year as possible. So let me know, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Good morning, Grace Point. It is great to see you today. I'm here with Jason Turner. Jason is a member of our LC, and he's also one of our nominees for the next LC. And so we've been taking some time each week leading up to our business meeting on the 27th at 6:30 right here on Zoom, and been hearing from our candidates. And today it's Jason. So Jason, thanks for taking the time today.
Good morning.
How long have you been a part of Grace Point?
Gosh, I guess it was around fall of 2016 that I officially, you could say, started attending Grace Point regularly. I'd been going to another church here locally in Nashville for a while, and that church went through some stuff. And I had known of Stan and his preaching going back to the late 90s when I was in college here, when he was at Christ Church. And so he had already kind of been on my radar. And of course, by fall of 16, the inclusion statement, all of that stuff had happened. So it was at the front of my mind when I kind of, I guess you could say, unconsciously began church shopping that fall. And then as of early 17, I very quickly decided that Grace Point was my home. It was crystal clear that that's what I needed, and that's what I had been searching for, even though I didn't know I was searching for it. And I've been here ever since.
Awesome. Well, and so you're coming to the end of one term and looking at the beginning of another. And you've been on the LC during some really interesting moments throughout the history of our community. You led well through that. So I would just be interested to hear think about the last few years. Like, what are some of the things you would say you're proud of that Grace Point has been able to do, that the LC has been able to do?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, on one hand, it feels like 3 years has been a few months. And then on another hand, when you really stop and look at everything that's happened in the life of our community in the last 3 years, it feels like a decade. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just we have been through a lot. And, when I joined the board back in January of 2018, our community size was about 40 people. And, to be very blunt, we didn't know week to week if Grace Point was going to be there next week. And it was really a beautiful time, to be very frank. Thinking back of our weekly meetings, sometimes nightly meetings that would go into the wee hours of the morning, really rolling up the sleeves, because we knew as a board that whether it's 2 people, 40 people, or 4,000 people, that there was a need, not just in Nashville, but frankly worldwide, for a community that is leading the way theologically that Grace Point has led. And I look back at that time and, was it tiring and emotionally exhausting? Yes. But I would absolutely do it all over again, because even though back then we didn't know where we would end up, we all kept coming back to this belief of something beautiful will come out of this. And, so moving property locations 3 times in the last few years, from Franklin to Unity to Charlotte Avenue to now our to be determined, to a pastor search, which was also an incredibly beautiful experience, because frankly, through that, people like yourself really helped us see clearly that Grace Point matters and that Grace Point is here for a very, very big reason. So that was a great thing. And obviously you and Carla and the kids coming to us from that was a beautiful thing. I would also say, perhaps to some people, boring things like actually putting together and having a balanced budget. That's something that, when I first came on the board in 2018, frankly, we weren't able to do that because, again, we were literally surviving week to week. But we really put a focus on, hey, let's live within our means and stick to that so we can grow for the future. And we've done that. And then I think for me personally, what my former church did that I've always loved is a community outreach where you can actually see where your dollars are going to reach the community for other good purposes. And this past year, for the first time, we designated in our budget a specific amount from our giving each week that goes directly back to the community. And, good Lord, had we been able to predict in December of 2019 what March would do to Nashville, what late March would bring to the U.S., and then just everything that happened throughout last year, it really has been a great thing to see our generosity through our community go right back to the community. And for me, I feel like that's a big part of what we do, because people will receive that love. They'll see what Grace Point's about and hopefully come to know us better because of that, but also then become a part of our community. And I think that's something you always have talked about over the last several months, is how we're not just a Nashville church. We have literally become a worldwide church. And I think that's such an amazing testament to our community and the path that we've been on for the last several years.
And it's a testament to the leadership that existed, y'all in the LC and then the staff at the time, who, literally, is this thing going to keep going? Yeah, it has to. People need it. And now this wasn't an earthquake, it was one of my kids. And now we literally have people who are watching this right now from all over the world.
Yeah. The question we kept asking each other over the course of the last several years was, and I think it's relevant today, is if Grace Point did not exist, where would I go? Where would my family go? And I have a hard time answering that. And not that I'm looking for another answer, but it just speaks to the importance of our mission. And I think, I've been very fortunate to serve with between, I guess it would be 6 and 8 others over the last 3 years. And I can tell you, those people have a heart for this community. And I have a heart for this community, in large part because we can't come up with another answer. And so it feeds into that drive that we have of making this work. So there is a safe place for anybody who walks through that door, whether it's online or in person, where they instantly feel loved, they instantly feel safe. And that when we say people are beloved, affirmed, and included, it's not just a marketing slogan that you hear, at other churches where some say, all are welcome or come as you are. We really mean it. And we really believe it when we say, every single one of you, exactly as you are beloved, you are affirmed, you are included. And I think as long as we keep that as our focus, our community will continue to grow. It will continue to diversify. And, pretty soon we'll look around and Grace Point will absolutely reflect what we see the world as, not what necessarily the world is, because we're looking for that diversity, the love, the inclusion, and the affirmation.
Oh, I love it. So you kind of hit on some things, but you seem optimistic about our future as a community.
Yes. I mean, look, again, where we've been, where we are, where we're going. Again, we went from 40 people to over 300 people over the course of about 18 months. We went from one service to two services before the pandemic hit. Again, I believe I've been saying this to you, to others for a few years now. I believe there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people, even just locally, before you even get outside of Nashville, who are craving for what Grace Point has and what Grace Point offers. I still believe that with all of my heart today. And I believe that once we're able to meet in person again, God willing, soon, that we're going to continue to see that growth. And, now with growth comes some pains, right? Growing pains. So, but we look at those as opportunities. It's like, if we're going to serve more and more people, then we're going to have a need for more and more resources. So how do we do that? How do we look to the future? Obviously with the search for our next location, that's never an easy task, but it's also an exciting one, because again, with a new location comes new opportunity. And so I still believe, with what you're doing, with what all of the staff has been doing, our kids program has grown ridiculously over the last couple years. So, not to quote Whitney Houston, but I believe the children are our future. And so as our kids program grows, that's hopefully going to bring more and more families in, because as families come in with children, they're going to see, hey, you guys have a great kids program, so I can let the kids go do what they do while I can focus on my personal spiritual health. And I think that's what we've got to keep focused on.
Jason, thank you so much. Thanks for all the good work you've done. Thanks for being willing to serve, to continue to serve. Really excited about what this next few years is going to be in the life of our community.
I am too, and I'm very honored that the congregation has faith and trust in me, and I am optimistic and hopeful to serve another 3 years.
Fantastic. Well, Grace Point, January 27th, 6:30 p.m. here on Zoom, we'll be affirming our nominees and talking about budget and all sorts of good and some celebratory things too, as we look back on the last year and what you've done as a community. So we hope to see you there. Thanks for being here today. Let's keep going.
I used to think I wanted to be famous. I'd be recognized out in a crowd. But the funny thing is, anytime I've gotten what I want, it lets me down. Now I just wanna look more like love. I just wanna look more like love. This whole world is spinning crazy, and I can't quite keep up. It's the one thing around here that we don't have quite enough of. So I just wanna look a little more like love. I used to think I needed all the answers. I used to need to know that I was right. I used to be afraid of things I couldn't cover up in black and white. Now I just wanna look more like love. I just wanna look more like love. This whole world is spinning crazy, and I can't quite keep up. It's the one thing around here that we don't have quite enough of. So I just wanna look a little more like love. Oh, and I find the farther that I climb, there's always another line of mountaintops. Well, it's never gonna stop. And the more of anything I do, the thing that always ends up true is getting what I want will never be enough. So I just wanna look more like love. I just wanna look more like love. 'Cause this whole world is spinning crazy, and I can't quite keep up. It's the one thing around here that we don't have quite enough of. So I just wanna look a little more like love. Oh, like love.
Good morning, Grace Point. We are so glad you're here today. We want to welcome you wherever you are in the world. Our community really has become global, so that means we want to welcome you if you're in Germany or Argentina or Jordan or England or Wyoming, Washington State, California, Oklahoma, Texas, the Dakotas, Arkansas, Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, Michigan, Indiana, Pennsylvania, my goodness, Kentucky, West Virginia, go Mountaineers, and of course Tennessee. And there are places I didn't name and didn't mention, but if you're joining us from wherever you are in the world, if you want to just in the chat there, just let us know where you are so we can welcome you and know that we have family there as well. Today we're going to continue our series called What is Progressive Christianity? But before we jump into that, I wanted to take just a minute to sort of acknowledge where we are in the world right now and what's going on. And what I mean by that is 2020 was a really, really difficult year, and on many, many fronts. And then since November, we've been dealing with all this sort of turmoil around the election and people who didn't want to acknowledge the election. And then last Wednesday, or a week ago Wednesday, we had a domestic terror attack on our Capitol. And this past Wednesday, we had the current president was impeached for the second time, which has never happened before. And then we're looking at an inauguration, and around that inauguration are all sorts of threats of more acts of terror. So just wanted to create some space and say, if you're not okay, that's okay. If you're struggling, that's okay. If you're worried, if you're anxious, if you're feeling grief and pain, if you're some sort of amalgamation of all of those things, that's okay. Actually, hope isn't precluded or excluded by all those other things we feel. Hope actually comes to us in those moments and allows us to feel them and allows us to feel what we're feeling differently. So just know that you are loved. Know that you're not alone. Please reach out. If there's any way we can serve, if there's any sort of pastoral care we can offer, we are happy to do that. Feel free to send me an email at josh@gracepoint.net and we can set something up. Just know that you're not alone in these days. And I really, personally, I do believe that when communities like ours activate, as we're activating in the world, that we can actually bring about goodness and we can actually make the world a better place. And so thank you for being a part of that process and that work with us as well. So today we're going to continue a series we started last week called What is Progressive Christianity? At Grace Point, we call ourselves a progressive Christian church. But what do we actually mean by that? Last week we looked at the word Christian, and we talked about reimagining and reframing that word and radicalizing it. Of course, radical doesn't mean fringe or out in left field. Radical etymologically means back to the root. And so what would it look like if we could go back and discover what were the early Christians up to? What did they care about? And how did they organize themselves? And what we find when we do that work is that they were a community that had an ethos that led them to want to transform the world through acts of justice and compassion and through a boundary-breaking kind of love that transcended all the cultural divides and all the ways people used to hierarchically divide up the world. And if you missed that, you can catch that on YouTube, or on Facebook, or our website, gracepoint.net. Today I want to think about the other word. I want to think about, what do we mean by the word progressive? What does it mean to be progressive? If you listen to some voices, or, how many of you have ever said, when somebody said to you, what is your church like? And you're like, well, it's a progressive Christian church. And they kind of give you that side eye where they're not really sure you're now trustworthy, that you're somehow you have this plot or scheme to try to do something unorthodox or something like that. It's almost as if some folks think that if you use the label progressive, that you have some sort of nefarious scheme to do all sorts of terrible things in the world, like pursuing equity and justice, making sure everybody has health care, making sure people have the right to marry who they love, making sure the color of your skin doesn't determine how the police treat you, and making sure that our unchecked greed doesn't put the future of our planet in more peril. Like, those are the nefarious schemes, right? And of course, I'm being tongue-in-cheek and snarky jokes aside. The reality is, many of us began our journeys in a conservative context. And at some point, we began to migrate out of that conservative context into the world of progressive Christianity, even if it was unbeknownst to us. I did not know. I didn't wake up one day and say, this isn't working anymore, I am now a progressive Christian. It was a process. It was a journey. And it's a journey where, I think as long as you're living, you're on a journey. And so the reality is that for some of us, we just began having experiences that challenge the boundaries that our conservative theology had given us. Boundaries and ideas like who God is, or what God is, or who does God love, and who gets included in God's love. What does it mean to be human? Do we begin with shame and guilt, or do we begin with connection and wholeness, right? These sorts of questions began popping up, and the boundaries that I'd been given would not hold. For many of us, we were like Abraham, longing for a land we had never seen and willing to take whatever journey it took to get there. The path hasn't always been clear, and what we've come to understand is that certainty doesn't exist. But we're moving forward one step, even when it's dark and we have maybe a candle out holding so we can see. Even when it's dark and uncertain, we're moving forward because we may not know exactly where we're going. It may not have big bright signs, but we know where we were, right? And the uncertainty about where we're going is far outweighed by knowing the inadequacy of where we've been. Right? We may not have all the answers, but we know way back when we thought we did have all the answers, and we know the way that excluded, and we know the way that wounded, and we know that way it even wounded us as we were wounding others with it. We know the inadequacy of where we started. And so we keep journeying, hopefully, because we know that there's a better way to be Christian, and more than that, there's a better way to be human. And so if we were to, in broad strokes, just think about sort of conservative theology and progressive theology, just to kind of create a framework, I would say traditional, and when I use traditional here, I do not mean that it's always been this way, and I don't mean that this has even always been assumed within Christian history to have been the way. What I mean is it's the dominant perspective. So if we talk about traditional conservative theology, it tends to be grounded in the past. Right, it tends the present and future have sort of already been decided based on texts and interpretation of texts that happened 500 to 2,000 years ago. So conservative theology tends to look back to moments when people made certain decisions, when they came up with certain interpretations to certain creeds, and that's sort of where it's frozen. And so to live in the present and to move to the future is to do so looking back to the past. Now I'll say progressive theology values the past. Progressive theology doesn't, somebody used, and we'll use it again in a couple weeks, I'm sure, but somebody used the language of don't throw the Bible out with the bathwater, right? So progressive theology doesn't want to get rid of everything, but what progressive theology does, it values the past, but also seeks to remain open to rethinking the past in light of our experiences, in light of what we're learning, in order to shape the future in the present and future in a more just and generous way. Progressive theology does value the past, but we also value the present. We value what we're learning. We value our experiences of the divine. We value our experiences of other human beings. We value science. And as we learn all of these things, our experiences may call us to rethink how we've understood it. And as we begin that rethinking process, it makes the future a more hopeful, just, and generous place. To say we're progressive, I think, means we take seriously the words of Jesus in John 16 when he says to his disciples, he's letting them know his journey's about over. He's going to be crucified by the authorities. He says to his disciples, I have much more to tell you, but you can't bear to hear it now. Isn't that such a power? I've got so much more, but there's this moment where they cannot handle the information. I have much more to tell you, but you can't bear to hear it now. When the Spirit of truth comes, she will guide you into all truth. She won't speak on her own initiative. Rather, she'll speak only what she hears, and she'll announce to you things that are yet to come. Right? To hold yourself open to more information, to hold yourself open to more experiences of Spirit. Being a progressive Christian means that we are open to learning and open to changing our minds. It means we begin with an assumption that there are things our spiritual ancestors did not know. There's information they simply did not have access to. All right, so for example, in Genesis 1, the cosmological picture of Genesis 1 assumes that the earth rests on pillars, that there's a dome above us that contains windows, and essentially God opens those windows to pour down the rain. Right, that's what Genesis 1 constructs. Our ancient ancestors also assumed a geocentric cosmology. They believed the sun and the stars and all the other planets revolved around Earth. There's actually a story in the Bible, in the book of Joshua, that reflects this assumption, where the sun is made to stand still. Now, does this make our ancestors bad? Does this make them somehow terrible human beings? No, it doesn't, because they didn't have access to that information. We have had the benefit of history, of discovery, of all sorts of things that they couldn't have even. I mean, can you imagine going back and showing our ancient ancestors an iPhone? I mean, can you imagine? It would have just been completely unbelievable. And the problem we've seen in history, and especially in church history, isn't that they didn't have information, so they made the decisions they made. The problem we've seen is when Christians have been presented with better information. And in those moments, the church has not always, and I would say actually rarely, if ever, has the church responded to new information with curiosity or openness, but too often it and the people presenting it have been regarded as a threat. In the 15 and 1600s, the church rejected the idea of heliocentrism, that the sun was at the center of our solar system. Eventually, they condemned Galileo as a heretic because he held these views. And what's really stunning is that the church did not officially admit they got that wrong until October 31st, 1992. We're talking 1600s. From 1600s to 1992, Galileo was held to be a heretic by the church for giving them better information. The issue isn't that they were wrong. Of course they were wrong about stuff. Of course we're wrong about stuff. There's information that we don't have yet. There are inventions and creations that we don't know about yet. The problem isn't that they were maybe didn't have the full picture. The issue is the unwillingness for hundreds of years to acknowledge and embrace a more informed position. Ultimately, what we're talking about is repentance, because to repent means to change your mind, to change your heart, to walk one way, but then you turn around and you're going back the other way. There's a story in the book of Acts that expresses this so powerfully. And it's a story that, honestly, anytime somebody asks me about what it means to be a progressive Christian, I share this story, especially when they say, how do you justify getting there? How can you say that, well, that maybe there are some things in the Bible you just don't agree with? Or how can you say that the scriptures say this, but then you take this position? This story for me has always, on this journey, has always been so powerful and meaningful. And it's in the book of Acts chapter 10. One of Jesus' earliest followers, known as Simon Peter, he has an experience that transformed the way he saw everything, especially the way he saw the world. He had this vision. He was up on a roof praying and he was hungry. And he has this vision where a sheet is let down from heaven. And on this sheet are all sorts of animals, birds and reptiles. And the voice of God calls out to Peter, who's hungry, and he says, get up and kill and eat something. And Peter responds to the voice, I can't, my God. I have never eaten anything profane or unclean. Right? So the divine voice says, get up, kill, and eat. And Peter's response to the divine is, no, I'm a little more, I'm a little more faithful than you are to my religion. I'm not going to do that. Right? And it happens 3 times, the vision. Peter resists the command because God is calling him in this vision to do something that he has always believed it was off limits. Peter had kept kosher his entire life. There were certain things he didn't do, certain people, places, and things that he didn't come in contact with or consume. And in this moment, the divine says, I want you to cross that boundary the clean, unclean boundary. And Peter says, I can't do it. And I imagine for him, this is probably had to have been a difficult moment. Like he's wondering, is this some sort of test? Is God just trying to see what I'll do? Because I don't know about you, but my theology at one point in my life, like God just does stuff to see what we'll do. Yet we also say God is all knowing. So why does God have to do stuff to see what, like it doesn't hold up. But there are lots and lots of people who think that that's how God works, that God puts people to the test just to see what they'll do. And if they fail, he'll punish them. She'll punish them. Is this a temptation? Is this actually not the voice of the divine calling Peter into this boundary crossing moment? Is it maybe something in him? Is that the voice he's hearing? Is this a call, a temptation to unfaithfulness? Or the other possibility is something is happening here. And this is an invitation to see differently. Now, if we fast forward to this encounter Peter has in Acts 10, he ends up meeting a Roman soldier named Cornelius. And the text describes Cornelius as, in his household, as God-fearing people. They prayed to God constantly and gave many charitable gifts to needy Jewish people. And about Cornelius particularly, it says he was an upright and God-fearing person, respected by the Jewish people. This idea of God-fearing, it's a category essentially in the New Testament that is used specifically in Acts. And it's a category that essentially are made up of people who are not ethnically Jewish. They haven't gone through a conversion process, yet they find the Jewish God compelling. And so they pray, they give, they participate in the ways that they possibly can. But they can't fully participate unless they go through that, cross that boundary and become and convert. So this means Cornelius is a Gentile. He's 99% of the world's population, right? He's someone who represents, for Peter, he's someone who represents otherness. And he's someone who represents a danger to his own purity. Now, when Peter encounters Cornelius has an experience of God through his conversation with Peter that was very similar to the one that Jesus' first followers had. And that moment, seeing this experience happening and not being able to not deny, like, this is an authentic experience of the risen Christ. We cannot deny it. Here's what Peter says. I really am learning that God doesn't show partiality to one group of people over another. Man, think about the power of those words. I really am learning that God doesn't play favorites amongst God's kids. I really am learning that God actually does have the whole world in her hands and loves the whole world. When people ask me, why are you progressive? I point to this story. It's a reminder that the God experience will always surprise us. It'll always call us to go beyond all the ways we've hierarchically carved up the world, all the boundaries we've made to say this is how far God's love goes and it goes no farther. Or this is who can be in this community and it goes no farther. The reality is, it will always call us, the God experience will always call us to be attentive and sensitive to the ever-expanding work of Spirit among us as she calls us into more loving, more generous, more compassionate, more equitable. And actually, I think if we can just sum all that up, we can say the Spirit as she calls us to be more fully human than we've ever imagined we can be. See, I don't think the work of Spirit is to somehow take us out of the human and into the divine. I think the work of Spirit is to awaken us to the fact that we're already in the divine. And Spirit is to awaken us to the reality that being human is exactly who we're supposed to be. It's who we were created to be. And that sometimes when we talk about all the terrible things we do in the world to one another, that's not human. We'll just want to say, well, we're only human. No. That's not human. What we often call humanity is what we're doing when we're behaving with one another in subhuman ways that are beneath our humanity. I think Spirit calls us into a full humanity. And that's why I'm a progressive Christian, because as I follow this Jesus, I am reminded again and again and again that the journey isn't over. That as long as there's breath in my lungs, the journey continues. I do not have everything figured out. I do not know everything. There is more to learn and there is more to discover. And the more flexible and pliable we are, the more transformed we become. And the more flexible and pliable we are, the more we're willing to say, I don't know about that. I'm curious about it. Maybe I should learn about it. Maybe sometimes we learn about stuff where we're like, that's not really for me. That's not really a thing I think would lead me to be more fully alive and more fully human. But I think this journey of progressive is just about acknowledging there's a lot we don't know, and there's a lot we think we know that we may need to let go of. And that's okay. And that doesn't make God angry, and it doesn't make God afraid. That actually it's Spirit leading us into this journey. I love this quote from Vincent Donovan. He said, "The day we are completely satisfied with what we have been doing, the day we have found the perfect, unchangeable system of work, the perfect answer, never in need of being corrected again, on that day we will know we were wrong, that we have made the greatest mistake of all." The moment we have it all figured out, the moment we can have God or faith or doctrine in this nice little neat box, we'll know that it's actually been an idol we've been messing with the entire time. We know we don't get everything right. We know that we all make mistakes. And right now, some of us, probably all of us, hold a belief or beliefs that are likely just incorrect. In the sense of, we think a thing about a thing that's just not how it works, right? I think that's okay. And I think if we're confronted with better information, a more just and generous way, I hope we'll take it. I hope we'll let go of what we always thought, and we'll take the thing that's leading us into a more loving, compassionate human story. But the one mistake we won't make here at Grace Point, we will not make the mistake of assuming we have it all figured out. We won't bow down at the altar of certainty or orthodoxy or doctrine. We will instead follow the Spirit in all of her wildness, beauty, and grace as she calls us forward. When people ask me, what does it mean to be a progressive Christian? I think it means that we're unfinished. And that it's okay to be unfinished. Because as long as we have breath in our lungs, the journey continues. New information is received. Transformation occurs. We begin to see things with new eyes. We hear something new that helps us let go of an old perspective that was actually keeping us back and was actually perhaps hurting somebody else. And so at Grace Point, we want to remain open to the work of Spirit. We want to have moments where the sheet gets dropped down and our entire system of understanding gets challenged. And on the other side of that, we're invited into becoming a more fully, a more generous, more loving and compassionate human being. That's what I mean when I talk about progressive Christianity.
Fear not. from these troubled seas. This tiny ship that carries me. It is not yet, but it will be. So heaven come, it's you and me. Fear not, keep on, watch and pray, walk in the light of God's highway. I'm holding on to you, love. You're holding on to me. I'm holding on to you, love. You're holding on to me. I'm holding on to you, love. You're holding on to me. Fear not, keep on, watch and pray, walk in the light of God's highway. Fear not, keep on, watch and pray, walk in the light of God's highway.
Once again, Grace Point, thank you so much for being here with us today. I hope that you found this meaningful. Every week we post some question guides on our social media channels to help engage the sermon further. So if you're interested in that, look those up and let us know what you think. Send an email, make a comment on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever that looks like. And let us know how you're engaging with this and what your thoughts are. And don't forget, we're also, toward the end of this series, we're going to have a question and response time where I'm just going to spend the sermon time in a gathering responding to your questions about the previous sermons or about just progressive Christian questions, I guess. So feel free to send those to me, josh@gracepointwithanalien.net, and I look forward to receiving those. Grace Point, as we move into this week, may you know you are loved. May you know that you are not alone, that you have a family here with you, and that we really are together in this. Until next time, we love you, Grace Point. Grace and peace be with you.